I was born into that Victorian anomaly known as a grand but impoverished family. My grandfather was a renowned playwright, Richard Sheridan, and my father, a colonial secretary. Unfortunately, Father died when I was 8, leaving us in rather desperate straits. I like to think that had our finances been better, my mother would have been more discerning when my first husband, George Norton, came calling to ask her for my hand. However, by the time this Tory member of Parliament appeared upon our doorstep, all she could think about was our financial burdens. He seemed the answer to her prayers. I disliked the man instinctively, and I voiced these apprehensions to my mother. She dismissed them all, and, fearing for the well-being of my family, I eventually conceded. So began decades of unspeakable torment. I hid the bruises from his beatings under lace collars and silk sleeves. And when he set a kettle of boiling water down upon my hand, I hid the scalding beneath a beautiful pair of calfskin gloves. But all of these indignities were trifles compared to the psychological beating I took from him and others in the battle for my 3 sons. After 10 years of living in this nightmare, it all came to a head. I returned after a brief visit to my family to find my sons gone and the servants under my husband's command barring me from the house. What recourse did the law provide? Absolutely none. For at the time, a married woman in England had no legal existence. Her being was absorbed in that of her husband. She could own no property, and any property she did acquire, including the clothes on her back or wages she had earned, all belonged to her husband. The next decade, despite public scandals, betrayal by friends, and scurrilous lawsuits in which I had no legal right even to defend myself, I fought like a tigress to reclaim my right to see my boys. The news of our conflict was so well publicized that the popular novelist Charles Dickens fictionalized it in Bardell versus Pickwick. Ironic. The literary writer is transformed into a work of fiction. But, irony aside, I'm proud to say that I eventually won the battle, not just for myself, but for every abused woman in England. More importantly, I'm now reconciled to my dear boys, though I fear they have been severely wounded by the rage of their now deceased father. Perhaps my dear friend and soon-to-be spouse, William, can help me bind up their wounds.
I'm well aware of London's problem with prostitution. Does it surprise you that one of my gender and station should be so forthright? How can I not be? I see these desperate souls on the move outside my home here in Piccadilly nightly. But even if I were so obtuse as to ignore what my eyes can well see, there are reputable sources that would not allow me to ignore the facts. Henry Mayhew recently reported in the Times that London has around 80,000 prostitutes. His article goes on to say that the one group particularly vulnerable are young female servants. You see, if a young woman fails to procure a good reference from her last employer for whatever reason, she's in danger of long-term unemployment and ultimately prostitution. In the Westminster Review, William Rathbone Gregg further illuminates their plight. The career of these women is a brief one, their downward path a marked and inevitable one, and they know this well. They are almost never rescued. Escape themselves, they cannot. So what's to be done? I can't simply sit here surrounded by loved ones, friends, and material wealth and do nothing. My beliefs will not allow it. For I'm reminded in John's epistle that whoever has this world's goods and sees his brother or sister in need and shuts up his heart from him, how can the love of God abide in him? I'm to love not only in words, but also in deeds and truth. That's why I was delighted when yesterday's post brought me this letter from my good friend Charles Dickens. As you can see, it is rather lengthy. Brevity is not his forte. Suffice it to say that in it, he has proposed I finance a refuge for these women. I intend to do so, and will send a letter assuring him of my full support this afternoon.